Sanje Shodan Soje Shodan Na Chancho Parto Dane Kya Soje Daji Chen Gebe Sonam Ge Rola Benje Sanje Puru Sanje Shodan Soje Shodan Na Chancho Parto Dane Kya Soje Daji Chen Soje Rola Benje Sanje Puru Shu. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until I attain enlightenment. Through merit of practicing generosity and so on, may I attain Buddhahood for all the sentient beings. Okay, so I think we left on stanza 121. Yeah. Rishi Dagi Jiri Jeju Nijangni Kanji Rangi Kulang Misipa Tela Mongpa Dagi Jidarana Ngaje Chashin Tenji Ngumi Chas 121 please.
When for their sake those who are my lords have no regard even for their own bodies, then why am I the fool so full of self-importance? Why do I not act like a servant towards them?
Those genetic what? Sanje the Tishin Sheba. The Sanje the Tishin Sheba the Zoo. Ani Shangi Captain Gunlia Zuzu. Tang Tangi Rogina, Sanji Shosama Denduzembe, Sanji Chuk in Dunia. Gamruchi Gorba. What did I say? Ta Ranzu da Jiggy. Captain Gun. And the Dutch Demi Conjusum Chati. Ani Dian Ani Jiggy Sanje down. Any Chanju Samba. And Sang that Yadan Jashin be Chanju Samba to Zoo. Any Jiggy Randy Kuzam that Jiggy Kudi that Sunjet. That Dorduna Jiggy Simjan Pendo Chevrolet. Ani Nye Pendo Chigi Samsam Jiggy. Ani Jiggy Gulun Jiggy Rakwada Pasha Chamuzamia. Ani Jiggy Mending Ani Sanje the Chanju Samba Dozo Ani Simjing turned the Diginang the Nanshimaris. That Digi Simjin Lia Jiggy Sanje the Chanju Samba Dozogi, Pendo Nang the Nanshin Becab Litilia, and Yegi Chikarsobre. Ani Chigitelia, and it never misship some jigdown. Ani Pendo Tulatin Buji Chavatelia. Ani Ngombe Ngaji. Ani something to chase over. That thing I do dinner yoshe, or so say. Talk on your says your vacation. It's running through our Parsa blood saver.
Running in a blood and so.
Oh, did what? Dinner Shinchi. Yungu yore. I thought you want to turn around to Jiggy Simjan to Hench have a dealer. You don't you some Naroya, Jiggy. You Mazuma son, you shave a cigarette. You shave a sana, Saman Hagoba.
거기
show off 말be show off
셔발해요.
어디를 접시 또 제베네 17인 삼삼다 자와 니니 퇴하면 지를 샤마스 다디 오늘 란저 원뱅 알게 다디 쳐바질 차샤베나 야르게 도야라야 아니 고켄 야르게 땅야라야 지금 랑가 까켄데다 고 당부데 디리도가 니는 점베 아니 샘징이 퇴연셔바 팔아팀비 중에 이게 찍다 지게 지 가서 참래 찍다 가서 마서네 난게 잉려야 로주야 착 로요 라이트닝 톡톡 참래 동규여나 시중 아주 제가 열때 근데 잡아다람 선생님으로 드리니 시부지 체인 삼시 원뱅 알게든지 딱 자원인이 체인 그 말이지 대인도 아 딘정 알게드 파 샤지 아니에다 심정이 되어는 시치징에게 삼바치기 인스 데려도와 나디 탐저려도와
림치 디스노르바 쿤론 내기 지난 내기 카다에 쿤론 트라싱 락바단 타마 니카 메바도시 소르베 쿤론 카세 디상게 코랑 젠칩셈베 멤베도시 인지로
요마르바 섬다 참문디 컨트 락바디다 징얘기 균을 언제로 써봐다 아니 류다 된제지기 나다 이 동안에 자와 지원도 좀 니 체인 양받들이 연구를 다 되는 양치기 고론 타신 타와도 아니 되게 된 체련성 다 되게 코너야 디 체구리 세게 그런 거 좋아 되려 된제 점시에 매드니 다 돌도나 산제의 전주선바 산계획이 안주마선에 다 슈글 계정인 거래 다신냠 제세티 다신냠 제 고야기 좀전 저거 저기 생기 된 제발라 아니 네 딜이야 된 최고 그냥 배니 물론 그 저와 참문데 까야 탑직들에도 와 어디기다 단다 디슈글 계정인 거로 하죠
and so here we are discussing the verse 121, and in relation to this verse, when we're discussing to some extent, when we think about the Buddhas, the Tathagatas, who are, our protectors and our refuge, and as referenced in the verse, Sangha Mother taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So those are the three refuges of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. These are our places for which we go for refuge, and these refuges, especially the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, are not just in terms of their kind of physical aspect, but in terms of their kind of mental aspect of working, having that extremely sincere wish or sincere wish for to work purely for the welfare of the sentient beings. So they don't have any sort of their desire, their sort of activity is to perform acts of welfare for all sentient beings. That's their kind of wish, and there's no kind of selfish context to that, even in relation to their motivation. There's no kind of selfish context either on a kind of gross sort of level where they're hoping to get some kind of self benefit or satisfaction, or on a much even on a subtler level. And we'll talk about, we'll talk about later on in the text where we come to the section on the exchange and equalization and exchange of self and others as a method for generating bodhicitta, and particularly in that second aspect of equalizing self and others, then there we find this very subtle kind of self-interest, motivation of self-interest, which is the primary kind of obstacle to us being able to exchange self and others. So first of all, the equalization and then the exchange. So, you find there's that they have a kind of pure motivation to perform acts of welfare for sentient beings. And but then for ordinary people like ourselves, then it's when even if we sort of stir ourselves to work and act and work for the welfare of all other sentient beings, then at times there will be some kind of manifest pride or about doing this, and sometimes that's okay. It kind of kind of runs in our blood a little bit, that we when we develop that kind of sort of positive motivation to be of welfare for others, then at times it's possible that this will come up. So and there may be this sense where we feel very sort of gratified by our sort of sense of concern for others, and almost to show it off a little bit, and that needs to, of course, be got rid of. This is one of the first things that a Dharma practitioner, in order for their practice to develop, they have to sort of stop this. This is one of the first kind of things for us to sort of to work with and prevent. And so we have to, and it may come, they may kind of flash into our minds, like this kind of sense of pride, a little bit kind of puffed upness, or kind of show off mentality may come up to us in our flash into our mind, like the kind of lightning. And these things we have to really be sort of aware of, and try to prevent as much as possible, and to replace that with the wish to always be a benefit to sentient beings as much as we can, without this sense of over sense of pride.
Olas. Tatene dinalone ngaranju kechishu chigi sikje dinalone di dijigodu sikje tangbo digi rishi dagi jirgyuba jigyur nijani sidu sanje dang ani chanju samba dezo rangi jirgyuba sidu da pe chodo gyuba rangi migbitasa chodo gyuba jig yinzang slavyor jigje Nibati Tinashin, Sanje the Chanju Simbazo now Nashin, Annie Negi Aje Machip Annie Simjingi, Tenchi in Sech. The needing of the Tijan Aloya, Samodaya, Shizu Dini Redua, the Illusion di join Dini to Java Servelia, and Jazanga Ta Mar Sanje Dang. Sanje da ani tanda sanje ge lamda shek dan shek shimbe chanju samba du zogi ane jege rangdun dikar sore shendun o su dumni rangdun shala dup segi ajo labje ji ajo takwa khodi yore ta di nalo la ya da kechi shudi ten sena karsiyor. Tanda inji na role ya any patient why do I not act like a servant towards them? The ten said the the servants lava. The gage aranjogi tanda dila ten said the servant sena tada kogu yebesonstu. The kogu do zambe 아주 서벤 다작 다 서벤이 된다 그러래. 아니 다 지단에 미수지기는 아 서벤 첸도 서벤 서브지기는 아 서벤 지금에서 봐. 그래 말해.
Okay.
저 서브지기 I am not a servant. I am not a servant. 스크바.
야.
servant 랍나 또 지기 마데 지그리 지기.
그래서
요고슬라브는 지단에 지조관로는 야우지기 말과 제가 공화를 안에 로치긴 레슬라.
Mhm.
다 된다 운에 가르쳐서는 서벤 슬라비나 된다 운에 가르쳐 슬라비나 아니 팀 지기다 제네 뭐시지 봐도 심진 된체 인사나 아니 베데다 미지고랑 아니 심진 된체인데 인슬라비나 다 서벤 제 투르 안주 켈레마도 가르쳐나 서벤 제디 수수 되바 요나 아니 그래서 서벤 멤버 좀생 가르쳐는 되바 요나 수수 내가 지주체 되바 메나 아니 디 내가 마치비지 아니 내가 샴바 제가 줘야 디기 구롱도 여자 안가라 되바디 디 가서 당카도 없어야지 디 전도 메시지 디 매베는 같이 디마도 메시라는 안가 더 메시지 하라인 있으려나 아니 심지어 탐지기 서번트 라빈 딱딱 보도도가 어디 인도점에 다 개체초대 나 베타사디 상계의 전주 선배도 심정기 서번트 제샤스 서번 재단 가르쳐서나 다 남주 여러 지 직제 단단히 전 뒤에다 서민일 당송아 어디를 직제디 재장가 단다 봐도 마당한 레비 심정도 조기 아니 지금 장등 주단 때체 다 기부 탈도 보지 야고지 두기요나 두토버지 고그르데 간이냐냐 최송 세치 시벌 랑게 전제다 투버 신기 전제버스레 디니니 체벌 통송 세치다 준주 측대주와
네.
어디다 측디 말한주 양내양도 디를 또 측 성로마다나 아니 대여 측인 세트 자원이는 거 말이야
Mhm.
어디지
And so one thing I'd like to highlight in this shloka is the first line, where it says, when for their sake, those who are my lords. So this is the first line of verse 121. And here, when we're thinking about the we're for their sake is the sentient beings, those who are my lords, So we're thinking of the the sentient beings as and so we the way to sort of understand this is we've got to remember that the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are here in this text, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are the great example to us. They're the ones who we should have look to as a sort of role model, as a kind of example, and we should always be looking to act in the ways that they, we're always looking to cultivate ourselves to be able to sort of act and think and act in the ways that they so we sort of look up to them. They're the place that we look up to and so to do as they do. And we see that that we understand that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas take no great pride for working for the welfare of others. It's a kind of natural process. Now this is also so this is in relation to like the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, those who have traveled the path to enlightenment, and those who are currently traveling the path to enlightenment. And these kind of beings understand that that by performing acts for the acts and thinking and acting for the welfare of others, manifestly doing that in as a byproduct of that, they understand that their own kind of sort of needs and or welfare are accomplished. And one thing I need to sort of try and connect here is this, because also in this verse it mentions about in the last line, it says, "Why do I not act like a servant towards them, which is talking towards the sentient beings, of course. And when it asks why not act like a servant towards them, then here I'm wondering whether I was sort of thinking about how this the word servant, or it sort of fits into this context. What's the meaning of does it fit well? What's the meaning of being a servant? And usually we might like to think there's a part of us that doesn't feel quite so comfortable with the idea of being a servant. We'd more like to say, oh, I'd happily serve other people or other beings, but we're not so keen to say that I'm actually their servant. It has a kind of slight uncomfortable feeling to us if we're really honest. And so if we said, in terms of this context of being a servant for all sentient beings, if we were to say, oh, and until death, until the end of this life, that I must kind of serve sentient beings until the end of the death, to the end of this life, and to be a servant to them and to the end of this life. Why is it that we perhaps find that a little bit difficult to accept? And perhaps we think that even the word even in the context of the word servant in an ordinary context, it still has this implication that the servant still might, if the servant wishes, it sort of feels comfortable with the work that they're doing, then they will happily perform it. But if they become unhappy about the kind of work that they have to do, then maybe they have some kind of choice. Maybe it's possible for them to change their work. So, but here, I think it really is the correct meaning. There's only one way for us, and that is for us to be this, servant of the sentient beings. And our examples of those who are servants of the sentient beings are, the ones who have traveled the path, the Buddhas, and those who are traveling the path, the Bodhisattvas. And so there's also a verse which which says that the childish work for their own welfare. The sages, the rishis, work for the welfare of others, and look at the difference between the two. So this is that which is very famous verse from Shantideva. And so we sort of and then when we understand in that context as well, then we will really get the real meaning of what it means to be a servant, of how all the sentient beings are connected to me. We wish to really act as a servant to them. So if you sort of put all these pieces together, I think the word servant is actually a very good context, rather than just saying, oh, I wish to serve sentient beings. I think servant is actually the better context.
Bodhicitta. Down the stanza 122. Kanda deve tumnam ye gyurushin kala nena midi jung gyuruwa teda gawe tubokun ye shin tela neji tubla neba che. 122, please.
Because of their happiness, the conquerors are delighted. However, if they are harmed, the conquerors are displeased. Hence, by pleasing them, I shall delight the conquerors, and by harming them, I shall hurt the conquerors.
Da simjennya pen tawa do never changing maris. Da namsha junde never chedi simjen에 경험하기 위해서는 보여진 아주 선목단계 열과 다 전주 심비스 디점심에 봐. 심전의 내가 제베는 심전 파종어디 경험하기 위해서 해야 지당. 나 최바진 배찬은 소소 디고사 그래서 좀 전 디니 잠마 인바 디기 강라 양교 선목단에 지 갔던 것도 선. 아니 상gel님도 있었다. 다. 이도서 상겔 심전의 내가다 소소는 심전의 내가 채나 심 남셔 준동아 란주 삼로당당 심전 내가 채나 심전의 야 경라그제 심전의 내가 지교 말스르바
Mhm.
다 최바진 비찬에 아니 디고사 그랬어
Mhm.
삼단 거요 다 전주 선배 지기 지기 디기 땡라 양교 삼로지 가르는 것이나 아니 디기 상계 라인이도 세지 다디 리베 컨디스 두고 임바스다 요즘 다디 리베 두고 오르지리 상계 디나 아니 타직도 샘진기 된 버시 두긴기 아니 기우진 바 소저 켈렌차와 대인도 점에 다 된디기 아니 가서 샘진기 된 버시 두긴기 전주 샘보다 상계 야 네버 마손 네버 체슈기에 가르랬을라나 아니 다 쿠란즈 마손에 프로젝트 체슈디 그러봐 체슈디 아니 디레 다 디기 된다 디 두비알이야 소소네베 제데비나 텔을 하네베 체체 개요마 다딩은 저기 그쪽도와 네 인도 점에 아니 니차 추지래야 수수기 라나네베 제바당 신심전을 네베 제바 삼로코바당 디기 상계라인이고 여버디 never do around juda some quarter of chebu reason love direction.
And so in terms of verse 122, then we in terms of sort of the harm, causing harm ourselves, causing harm to other beings. And if even just in a very ordinary context, we will think that maybe the sentient, by causing, there's harm that is caused to sentient beings in the process. If we're a practitioner and we think in the context of being a practitioner, then we'll also think that we're kind of harming ourselves in a sense, because we're by causing harm to others, we're accumulating negative kind of negative karmas or negative actions, so you have those two kind of contexts. But when you come to the sort of on the level of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are their entire sort of focus is on wishing to create, act for the welfare of all sentient beings. And so what we can do is add another level onto those two contexts in relation to ourselves and harm to ourselves and the sentient beings. And that is that by harming the sentient beings, we harm the Buddhas. So how do we establish that kind of through reason? Actually, it's very easy to establish through reason, because the Buddhas and also the Bodhisattvas are their main kind of their thing. It's their main project, their thesis, their greatest sort of focus is to work purely and single-pointedly focused on acting for the welfare of all sentient beings. And so if we harm the sentient beings, in that sense, we're also creating harm to, we're also causing harm to the Buddhas, because their vast kind of project is that of always helping sentient beings. And so therefore there's no greater harm done than to harm the sentient beings, which harms oneself. It harms the sentient beings, but it also harms the Buddha. So there's no greater harm than doing things which harm other sentient beings.
알았어. 다 제트는 신이서래. 다 되네. 자들이 죽자숨 지들을 르군의 멤버와 대박군지 이들이 민주와 대신 심전에 받쳐나야 투지처럼 집에 탑에도 스타디 측디베 좀 맞으니 타치고 배지 가서래 인지 민지 계정 말이 띵아라는 최바 방제라야 안 따다 심기 맞으네 타 맞추베 소르지 레레 슬라바 제야디 로아체디 예술로지 지기요 망제 아란츠 좀 아란츠 베스고다 다 딜이야 아니 딘제기 인지 민지 제야 민두스 야 제가 좀 비쇼라게 아니 간제 심 상제리야 최바 제 상제리 된 상제리야 미제 아니 지금 가르쳐 그래 최바표 수남 사업 제바 있나요? 아니 심지어는 내가 제바 있나? 아니 상제리야 아니 지금 쇼질을 최바표 쇼질을 심지어는 내가 제바 있나? 딘니기 지고만 손에 쳐야지 가르래 never chair the pen never the chair yana cheva pibati and sunam chair best lavina and ta church share la carriosna and simjan never chevati but jigi karsore ta azuma suneta gyajur bumjurs cheje namjusi grbago o dil never chair chagdi us peji shachi pedi yanya bodwa pedi 이제 어디 단다 인지나 로주로
Yo mare.
오케이 디 녀라 디 줄다 아니 인지나 소송쇼
Oh, Kelsey.
Yeah, Kelsey
123. Sorry, 123, Kelsey.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Just as desirable sense objects would give my mind no pleasure, if my body was ablaze with fire, likewise, when living creatures are in pain, there is no way for the compassionate ones to be pleased.
I was giving you a lot of credit there, Kelsey. I thought your Tibetan had got really good. So really, really good. So, so in this verse, what I want to do is connect this verse that Kelsey's just read. I want to connect that with this is a point which really has to be very kind of concretely and firmly decided, and I think it's a point that we're really maybe I don't know if whether we sort of really accept it or not, whether we really maybe we sort of agree with it when we hear the words, but actually in our sort of manifest actions we actually do otherwise. And that if we think about the context of creating accumulating merit, and then with sort of but focusing on the Buddha, then we offer praise to them, and make offerings to the Buddhas. And then on the other hand, we sort of weigh these two things up. On the other hand, we there's occasions or contexts where we on the other side cause harm. Let's say in a sort of someone offering making offerings to the Buddha, and on the other hand someone harming sentient beings. Now if we look at those two, and this is something we really have to become very clear about, is that which of those two has the greater kind of potential in terms of their kind of karmic effect. And it's quite often the case that we think of, whether we actually believe in whether we'd actually say the words or not, but actually in our way of acting, we really believe that offering to making offerings to the Buddhas, that has the greater potential to kind of outweigh harm caused to sentient beings. But actually what's actually through this example, what I see is that it's really the case that the the harm to sentient beings is, we could say, hundreds or thousands of times, hundreds of thousands of times, much more karmically serious than the offering of making offerings to the Buddhas.
제가 다디 빼들이야. 아니 아니 다디 뒤도 왔잖아. 지들 릴로군이 멤버 was. 인지는 간다 제비나. 제 뉴스성도. The should some
if my body was ablaze with fire, it says, if my body was ablaze with fire.
My body was ablaze with fire. What did you say? Fire. 제가 저는 수수수구리야 매발 until 칼라신부 지 샤샤위나 지단에 칼라신부 마가니요 마레스 야보레스 수수리야 야보체브레스 이내 수수수구를 매바 샤브나 샴바 상물로 디 세컨드리즈가 조디 수수수구디 지기 기부용에 체도로가 제가 다 산지에 생년디 조 가르에센스는 신경 보식 줄이야 다 지기 공부시되니 되게 아니 투제야데 신경 제나 투제 차들라 먼저 산지에 생주 선발이야 쳐버듯이 아니 샤고다지 아니 내가 제야데 아니 심지어는 내가 제비나 아니 산지에야 다 지기 무슨 내가 제 아니 쇼려야 지기 산지에야 지기 가서 그래 샵지 주비선으로지 벨레셰 됩선으로지 마도 차기요 말이스 이인도메다 개치주디 링아란주다 베 지단에 남바산제 지단 하바르도 양아주다 지 택진비 태고친비기 니지가 가서 그래다 전주 생기 다 겨울음식이 택진 송구면도가 남시기도 겨울음식이 아니 다지기 산스키디 주주 인생 속이 예버도 다디 삼콜 고유스레 제장가다 금생 가르스나 계속 좀 쉬어라게 타제지 가르스나 간제 심진리야 네버체비나 아니 산젤 가르체비나야 투제베 탑샴바 가해요 다투 지기 가서 그래 얘기 탑샴바 가해요 말세지 네버체 제의 가위나 신의 직 투제 직체 다 되네 심지어는 편도체나 딜을 하베다 투제 탑샴바 가게요 말이세 다디 타제도가 어디나 신체는 말한저 셔버 공백가가 지가 테스트에서 깔레 용으로 봐 깔레메벨레 같이 관이요 재산과 베베치디하고요 깔레 세티 아주디 저봐 남뷰티도 깔레 세트 전배 레가디 깔레 카보 요장 걸 깔레스라 봐 장 깔레 요르스 이나야 따딜이야 아니 심슈 깨주고 봐 디깔레 맵스에 탑시야 심슈 깨 심슈제 탑시도 다 디하고 쉬우스도 봐 이제 심전에 네버 심전에 편도시는 수수 된도 산제 게 아니 다의 뇨아 수수 기버 다디다 걔도 전부 쉬버려도 와디 어디 간저 the day-to-day reminder that Dirisha.
And so in this example here, for instance, in a normal context, if everything's generally okay and somebody brings along a delicious meal for us, then of course we'll be something delicious food that we enjoy, then we'll be delighted. But if so this is to relate the example to the verse here, but if then our body were ablaze with fire, then there would be not even not an instant. It would be completely secondary to think about and so, our body were a blaze of fire, but someone to bring us a delightful meal. The only thing that occupies our mind is relief from the blazing fire, and any other sort of delights, physical delights, for instance, would be completely secondary. And so, in the same way, the Buddhas only have thoughts for the welfare of others, and working for the welfare of others is what delights the minds of the Buddhas. If we sort of make offerings to the Buddhas, we confess our negative actions. All of these things are great, but if we're doing that while still causing harm causing harm to other sentient beings, then this will not delight the Buddhas at all. However much we serve them or make donations to them, if we're still continuing to do actions which cause harm to other sentient beings, then there's no way to delight the Buddhas. And this is particularly important as a Buddhist practitioner, as a follower of the of the Mahayana tradition, and as His Holiness is always saying, followers of the Sanskrit tradition, then this is extremely important to understand, that if we continue to harm sentient beings, then whatever else you do whatever else you do, there's no way to delight the Buddhas. If this is the only method, or the only method in which to delight the Buddhas, and if you stop doing things which cause harm to the Buddhas, then that will delight them. And this is something we really have to become very clear about. And this also is connected, because here in this chapter we're talking about the cultivation of the practice of patience, and in the Tibetan word kale, there's a sort of sense of which often when we're doing doing things which they can have some things can have a little bit of difficulty within them, in the sense of a kind of work or a kind of activity which in its context has a certain amount of difficulty attached to it. But then we need to sort of build up our courage and sort of mental strength, and in the context of this patience, and sort of always think to work for the ways in which we can help the sentient beings, and therefore this is how we please the Buddhas. So this is a kind of this verse is a kind of reminder of that.
Olasu. Tatene stanza 124. Tewe dagin dola ne chebe tuji chigun migi gyurba kang digde tirin sosor shagi migi kang la te tup sobar sul cheche. 124, please.
Therefore, as I have caused harm to living beings, today I openly declare all my unwholesome acts that have brought displeasure to the compassionate ones. Please bear with me, O Lords, for this displeasure I have caused you.
Tadi shulogati shologa gyada nishu tsaksum ta nishu tsakshi niti tangbo dilene nibadi rangshingi lego nichi 가르치는서나 아니 지 가르쳐 그래 다 탑시 디모도 요 말이스 심전의 내가 제베이나 상계래야 뇌 두고요래 심전단 저와 셴바 교부지체 녀부지체빈 상계단 타릉도 줘야기 레 사사버리 랍다 아니 정신이 셈나로야 네다 마음벌레 된데 지금 해서야 지다 아마 제시주들 교버제야디 디 네처 디부 정신이래도 디 오늘 지나디 이제 제월다 시제 계속 좀 쉬어라고 마도 슬랍 남브레데 디고 휴먼 네처 코라 정신이 레트웨치레 디 인도점베다 디나로리야 아니 정신기다 셈나로리 교버차고지 개원도 점베 아니 아 지가서 그래 심지어는 네버체벤 상지기 투마제버스 상지 공부 좀 비게 좀 말해 상지 공부 좀 해요 말해 이나양 아주 마순 뒤에 특이하고요 땜제 추루를 했어야 돼요
거기
상지 투지 말해서도 점베 상지 콘도사그레세 삼로지 레시그로 봐 상지에 양띠리지 가마가 되지가 저 야고체나 코란 가드에 두자체나 상지 마가야 된데 디 셈나로 삼로 카고라 지어리 디 인도점베 데 투제 마제세디 템데 추모 추게제들 템데 템데 세주가 아주 템데 auspicious 카리 사인 세주 고 유다 주 개와당 주 개와 야고지 주베이나 주부 대와지게 임바 타초원도 점베 디 템데 봐 템데 야고지 봐 주 민게베 chen 주 민게베 중에 타초 자비슈 디 템데 로거 봐 오디 인주점베 닌지기 템데디 아주 마소네 두미야리야 바로도 쥐어 온도 점베 안텔레 산지 투미게 버세다 바도 제게 아주 마소 아주기 아니 가마가 세게질 말이 디 인두 투미주버 카이엠바 아니 디디 트린 소소 샤바지스 데 디데sembe 레디 아니 소소 샤스디 다 소소 샤스 가서 요르스나 소소 샤단 양쇼 가르잖아 규딩에 제차위 샤스 디 인두sembe 드부디 용예레스 드부디 용예레스 용어를 해봐 깨버려 해봐 깨버려 해도 잠베 타디 규디 드부디 몸이 뭐라 니 규디 고버치 세디타 소소 샤데야 슈티르다 소소 워신베 토네 디 파샤야디 오디 누잠베 답변아 다른 얘기 동아르지는 비나버터서는 권나고 대린 비나버터 사차의 인자 다 권나야 된 케차베 스텝드점베 다 있는 메스하고 그래 야나는 류제제고 요래 딱 가르쳐고는 지기 어디 리도 어디 소소 샤브지 세디 아니 샤바데 체 아니 투버 서버에 서비스 당연히 제바디 심전에 제바디 상계의 타릉으로 드르비 레가지 제원들 아니 투버양 아니 관세 쇼인 지도 걸로 거버치 다 수수 생단이 쉬되 투버스 상계 좀 된대 상계 좀 된대야 아니 관세 쇼비 제래 나 공부 준비 계제 말다
건스스데 계제스 가르쳤다
건스스데 좀 소리세들이 안제 상계 소리세도 좀 상계 공부 준비 계제 말이스 안제 소리스라비도 좀 주든 지부기 자바딜이야 아니 콜이야 바로도 주지 숙심부 좀 들어와 인자 따디 빙예기는 두치셔서는 상계로 서버 서단 데리마도 상계 공부 좀 당에 권다스라비 계제 말이
And so in relation to this verse, so what we see is a sort of relationship between verses 123 and 124, where verse 123 very sort of naturally leads us into 124. So we in 123 we would talk about how harming the sentient beings harms the Buddhas, and then we'll sort of and the sort of cause and then one way to sort of so then what that sort of also brings in us is the sense that through those kind of negative harming other sentient beings, which then also harm the Buddhas, that kind of karmic cause actually serves to distance by saying that it harms the Buddhas, it kind of serves to distance ourselves from the Buddhas, and so Shantideva is not just sort of saying just, you know, to us, oh, just stop doing it, just don't do it, just stop it. But what will naturally come into our minds is that when we start to think like that, we have that sense of, right, okay, also I'm going to try and prevent myself from doing those kind of actions in the future. But also we'll think back to the past when we've done actions which have caused harm to the Buddha, and therefore caused harm to the sentient beings, caused harm to the Buddha, and therefore you know, sort of a strong regret, well, coming from the verse 123 into virtue, there's kind of natural strong regret that arises. So, you know, Shantideva knows human nature, and he doesn't just tell us to just stop it. He's sort of leading us along with this. And this is not a question of us not pleasing the Buddhas or getting the Buddhas angry or making the Buddhas happy or you know, causing the Buddhas to be happy and unhappy. This is not meant like this. What is meant here is a better way to think of it, is about sort of adenda, the kind of auspiciousness or inauspiciousness, is it auspicious or inauspicious signs? And the way to think about auspicious or inauspicious signs in this context is to think about the causes of virtue, the relationship between the cause of virtue creating the result of happiness, and the cause of non-virtue creating the cause of suffering. So this relationship is the kind of, you know, auspicious, in auspicious kind of auspiciousness in the sense of performing virtue, which creates happy circumstance, and inauspicious, I forgot the word, in non-virtuous actions which create suffering. So we think about it in this context of causal relationship, and not just this way of, oh, the Buddhas will get really angry with me if I do this, or the Buddhas are going to be really unhappy if I do this. It's not really, it's this kind of causal karmic relationship between action, virtuous and non-virtuous action, and the result, and therefore and the motivation behind them, and therefore there be a natural sense of wishing to confess. And again, confession would be in this context of, oh, you know, in the past I've done this particular kind of, I've created or acted in this kind of way to create this kind of cause, and this result will, you know, so therefore a committed kind of result will come from that cause. And before the result, although the result is almost certain to come to us, almost certain to arise, there's a sense in which before the result comes, we know what we've done, and we wish to kind of confess it. So for instance, for me, I enjoy peanut butter, but peanut butter causes me to have headaches. And so if I've eaten, you know, even if I've eaten peanut butter, I'll try to do, you know, sort of exercise or something. I'll try to do something which will kind of counterbalance my intake of peanut butter before the headache arises. So we sort of have this sense of wishing to, you know, feeling regret about what we've done, and wish to confess. And again, this is not just sort of saying, from the Buddhist perspective, this is not just saying, oh, sorry to the Buddhas, or I really, you know, it's not in that, it's not to be taken in that way. It's to the sense of being sorry or having regret is again taken in relation to the kind of karmic cause and the karmic the relationship between the karmic cause, and then in its effect. And so thinking about being sorry in relation to that, rather than just saying sorry to the Buddhas.
Okay. 当然就提点点啥小明着，so I think we will leave here today. Okay,
Dedication, please.
let's do the dedication. Yeah, yes.
Having thoroughly investigated in accord with all that I've heard, day and night, through the four reasonings, mind born of reflection on these topics of contemplation, may this discernment sever all doubts. In a land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. In all my lives, never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train, just like the hero Manjushri who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good conduct. With my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
And see
Thank
you
you.
next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Okay.
Thank you also. Grazie.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Grazie, Tea.